Red, green, blue, the three primary colors of light. Mix and match some combination of these three and you could pretty much create everything in our world from scratch. But did you know that being able to see all three colors in their primary form is actually your superpower? Most mammals on Earth literally can't see red. Let me explain. The color red has the longest wavelength out of all the colors in the visible light spectrum. Dogs, cats, cows, horses, pigs, and most other mammals simply don't have the cells required to detect red's long wavelength, so their world looks all faded and yellow. The bulls in a bullfight aren't going berserk and charging at the red fabric. They're chasing after the annoying goddamn flapping movement. The service dogs for blind people don't understand the traffic lights. They just kinda go with the vibe and try to figure out when to cross based on what everybody else is doing. Our ancestors have always been obsessed with red, the color of power, ambition, and revolution. Even before written history, red was always in the center of human life. How was seeing red a superpower of humans? How special was it? And what did it mean throughout history? I can't believe I'm covering the history of the color red, but here we go. The range of 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers covers the wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation that humans can detect, which we call visible light. This range is also the best at penetrating water, so we could deduce that the range of vision didn't change all that much ever since life mutated the first eyes underwater. Even now, hundreds of millions of years since the first abomination of a fish flopped onto land, all eyes tend to stay wet, almost as if they were still underwater or something. However, as vertebrates splintered off to their own species, the eye specs started to differ somewhat. For instance, fish can still see at least 4 primary colors. Most amphibians, except for cave dwellers, mostly see 4, and even reptiles and birds retain the ability to see 4 primary colors. So, how come most mammals only see not 3, but only 2 primary colors? We have to go a long way back in time, way before us mammals ruled the world. In fact, it was the other way around for the vast majority of history. Our ancient mammal ancestors were burrowing in the ground, hiding in caves, and only sneaking out at night to evade the eagle-eyed titanic predators like dinosaurs during the Mesozoic era. So, no wonder our mammal ancestors developed great hearing and listening while their vision degenerated by comparison. They were born in darkness, molded by it. They only saw light after the meteor struck Earth, and by then it was nothing to them but blinding. Their eyes didn't need to differentiate between the mid and long wavelengths because it was dark as shit anyway, and therefore couldn't tell the difference between green and red because those cone cells just fused together after eons of neglect. Instead, the eyes of these mammals evolved something called a tapetum lucidium, which enabled them to see fairly well with the tiniest amount of light. After all, if vision during the day was rendered useless because of predators, they sure as hell better be able to see well during the night. Because of such a traumatic past, most mammals, and especially placentals, can only see 2 primary colors even after the dinosaurs have long gone extinct. However, about 25 million years ago, a particular mammal subspecies brought back trichromacy, or the ability to see 3 primary colors from the dead. They were, of course, primates, and were known for being cunning tree swingers that needed really good vision. Primates weren't exactly predators yet, but they typically ate ripe fruit for food, so only seeing 2 colors was simply unviable. But being the only one able to see the color red in this green hell of a jungle was a game-breaking advantage, and that's how primates survived so well during the current Cenozoic era. In fact, about 50% of the cone cells for us primates are for detecting the color red, to the point where our hypersensitive eyes get tired and go on strike if we look at red for too long. And of course, us modern humans inherited this game-breaking trait from our primate ancestors. We, Homo sapiens, climbed down from the trees, ventured into the savanna prairies, and could dare to eat more than just fruit. However, the ability to track the blood trails of our prey during organized hunts enabled us to reign as the dominant predator of this brave new world despite our aggressively mediocre physiques that couldn't even smell that well and were slow as shit because, 2 legs instead of 4. Also, because humans were social creatures living in tribes, it was very important to know the status of every party member. Being able to see red basically gave us the ability to see everyone's health bars because we could quickly infer general health from skin complexion or things like gaping wounds. I subject to you that the color red was the color of life for humans even before the birth of civilization, because so many vital components of our life, like the sun, fire, or even blood, was red. In fact, a significant portion of linguists hypothesize that of all the words that refer to color, we invented the word for red right after black or white and bright or dark. The color red was so special for humans, and it was the very first chromatic color that we consciously recognize. As we Homo sapiens migrated away from Africa to every corner of the earth for civilization building, red was unequivocally given special, important status. We discussed how important it was to us primates, yes, but red coloring was also super easy to manufacture without the need for complex chemistry or advanced technology. There have always been so many different ways to make red pigments or dyes from the ancient days, so of course we took advantage of the low-hanging fruit. I mean, the whole world was full of red coloring. You could dig a hole in the ground to get one of the most common elements on the earth, iron, which happened to rust red. Alternatively, you could stab a hole in yourself or someone else to get free red ink. Ever wonder why so many ancient wall paintings and pottery were red? Mix rusted iron, or iron oxide, with red clay to doodle on the wall and you get red cave paintings. Make it into a dough and bake it and you get red pottery. Easy stuff. If you want to take it a step further, you could keep digging until you find elements like mercury and lead, which are a bit rarer but a hell of a lot more vibrant and prettier than iron oxide. The accessibility of red coloring was why so many ancient artifacts were colored red. Red was also very common in living organisms, which were used to color textiles instead of walls and pots. The easiest way to extract red from plants was the rubia, and it was planted all over the world for the specific purpose of make things prettier. Dry the roots of rubia and beat it into powder, and boom. Easy, super cost-efficient red dye right there. Egypt and the Near East used henna leaves, while China used safflower leaves to make a powdery red dye. And of course, the ability to make things prettier in this ancient, bland world was considered an expensive luxury, and therefore it was a cornerstone of ancient international trade. But the real deal for red dye was extracted from animals, specifically the parasitic scale insects that are found on cacti. These bugs nut this liquid called carminic acid as their primary way to deter predators. Well, in the harshest of ironies, this carminic acid looks like really pretty vibrant red dye for us humans, and we systematically hunted those bugs to dry them out and pound them into powder so we could have pretty red textiles. The red color from these scale insects are called kermes, which is where the word crimson and other words referring to the color red comes from. As you can imagine, this wasn't a very efficient process and required a lot of work, which is why kermes was considered one of the most expensive of all red dyes. While red was universally adored, it wasn't quite special enough to be considered the unrivaled best color ever. The East, particularly China, loved yellow, the color of gold and the emperor. The West, particularly Greece and Rome, thought the color purple was the absolute best because of how rare and difficult it was to make. Red, by comparison, was a bit too commonplace to be number one. Ironically, its accessibility was what made it so popular worldwide. In the East, red was considered one of the 5 elemental colors symbolizing the South and fire. It was just below the Emperor class yellow, somewhere around the Monarch class. If you wanted to have the right to wear red and decorate your house red, You better make sure you were a king, queen, or at least a high-ranking government official. This, sadly enough, is why the Korean kings in the Joseon dynasty would wear a red robe. The sky emperors of the Chinese Ming and the Qing dynasty were wearing yellow, and the Koreans didn't dare offend them by claiming equal rights and risk another million Chinese soldiers marching down the peninsula. In East Asia, red symbolized way more than just power. Just about every positive quality you could think of was associated with red. Red was considered the color that chased away ghosts and bad luck all the way from the ancient Zhou dynasty. The peasant populations wouldn't draw authoritarian aggro by dressing in red out in the open, but they made sure to sneak it in at any given opportunity. You can see for yourself how much the Chinese love the color red to this day. Any major holiday, red all over. Weddings, both the bride and groom would wear red and receive money from friends and family in red envelopes. This wasn't just an Asian thing. In the West, red was considered a solid 1.5 tier color at the bare minimum. Specifically in ancient Rome, red was the holy color of the god of war, Mercury. Only someone as important as a senator of the Roman Senate would dare to weave a hint of red in his toga back then. Now, Christianity becomes the factory-setting religion for Europe during the Middle Ages, and guess what color the Christians loved? Jesus Christ dying on the cross for the collective sins of humanity is the cornerstone of Christianity, and, Jesus Christ bled red blood. Red was naturally shoehorned as the color of martyrs and humanity's love for God Almighty. This is why the Catholic paintings have Jesus and all his disciples wearing red clothes, and this is why the cardinals, the most important priests of the Catholic Church, are wearing red to this day. As we pass through the Middle Ages to the modern era, the collective West start to view red slightly differently. The Reformation cast a nasty light on the color red, which now symbolized the corruption of the Catholic institution. Furthermore, the rapid advance of technology made other colors like blue and green way more accessible. So now the civilian population was able to mix and match all sorts of non-red colors. The modern era demoted the significance of red. But in the 18th century, red suddenly became the color of a completely novel, previously unthinkable symbol. Bloody Revolution. It all started in France, where the Phrygian cap became the symbol of oppressed people. With the explosion of the French Revolution, the revolutionary forces aggressively used the color red, the blood of angry men, and red, a world about to dawn. You can still see this in the French flag today. Of course, you can't talk about red without mentioning communism. This too started in France, where the first communist government in history started in 1871, the French Commune. Their new flag was just soaked red and wasn't very pretty, but communist factions all over the world inherited this symbolism, and red just became locked in as the color of communist revolution. The Soviet Union, notable for their communism, added a hammer and sickle to the red background to make the flag now best associated with communism today. Because the Soviets made red their thing, of course there was a red scare in the West during the Cold War. To be fair, the Soviets spray painted red on anything they could get their hands on to make the Red Army, the Red Square, the Red Star, and etc. Now, to wrap this episode on a high note, let's talk about the Nazi flag. Hitler described his new swastika flag like the following in Mein Kampf. The red expressed the social thought underlying the movement. White, the national thought, and the swastika signified the mission allotted to us, the struggle for the victory of... And I can't read the rest of that sentence on YouTube. Well, this has been David Bradford from Knowledge Raiders, our YouTube channel, which, of course, is also branded bright red.